Good evening, my friends. I'm Nero, and welcome. Today's video is once again going to be a little different. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know which one this is for this Spooktober. I do think I'm going to make this one an annual tradition. See, last year I was exploring fears and phobias. And one of the phobias I wanted to explore was thanatophobia, which is the fear of death. If you're familiar with my content, you know that based on some of the experiences I've had in life, death doesn't particularly frighten me. I'm not overly reckless when it comes to it, but I don't shy away from it. It just doesn't hold that same crippling fear for me. Not that there's anything wrong with those who do. Numbers have changed. And while it might seem that we're gaining ground, ultimately, we're not. Time keeps on moving, and we keep aging. And the end is always near. That's why it's so very important to me to make use of the time I do have. Not necessarily perfectly, not necessarily with expert efficiency. I leave work on time. Sometimes I'll stay a little late, sometimes I'll knock off a little early. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. I make sure that I make time for being productive. I make time for rest. I make time for my friends, my family, my loved ones, and myself, though not as much lately as I'd like to. And of course, I make time for my dogs. But that's included with family, let's face it. Pets are family. I make time to learn and to grow. And I make time to reinforce beliefs and facets of myself that I want to see persist throughout my life. This channel has helped me do some of those things. It has hindered in other ways. This is a time-consuming process. But it is not without benefit. I have made some very dear friends in this process. I have learned a great deal about systems and algorithms and content creation and myself in this process. I've learned and I've grown and I've invested time. I've shed blood, sweat, and tears into it, as it were. I've had frustrations. I've had setbacks. And I've made decisions that I might not otherwise have made had I not been creating content. I have become more self-conscious, self-aware of certain traits I have. My appearance, my sound, how I speak, and what I say when I speak. Even now, I'm finding myself trying to minimize the audio effects I have from even just salivating. That's one of those mnemonic tricks of saying the word salivate, and people will. Kind of a Pavlovian response. That's a bit of a tangent, though. I am now 35 and a half. approximately. And the average age is now, if I remember correctly, I suppose we could just look that up. The average age is now, or the average life expectancy for the US is now 76.33. So life expectancy has gone up, but so has my age. So this video will be longer than last year. It's not going to keep getting longer. It's not going to keep widening the gap. And even if it does, in the end, time will win. And I'm okay with that. There are things in my life that I would still like to do. But I also make peace with what has come already in my life. That's something I am trying to encourage everyone to do in their own lives. One of the videos I do still want to make during Spooktober is going to be my introductory video. This might serve as a temporary stand-in for now, because I want people to know what I'm all about when they visit my channel, when they start watching my content, in so much as I have content. I'm not the funniest YouTuber. I'm not the most skilled gamer. I'm not the best. I'm really just a guy with a camera and a computer and a microphone and an overly large full game library. I am someone who appreciates a good story and is able to immerse myself. I'm able to immerse myself in good game mechanics, and do frequently. I'm someone who cherishes and relishes in authenticity and sincerity. I'm someone who has seen communities change from being cooperative communities to spitting vile hatred. And I won't have that. I don't want any part of that. I look at the world around us in this day and age, and I see systems that have been put in place that force us to be divisive. They force us to put ourselves at odds with each other. They incite us versus them mentalities. And that's not strictly politics. That's lots of things. Even gameplay is very competitive. We have entered an era where virtually everything is being documented, recorded, noted. And it is difficult for anyone in this day and age to make a mistake. Whether it's a small mistake or a large mistake or a life-changing mistake. We have embraced a culture that will not forgive or certainly will not allow someone to just laugh at it or let it go if they need to for their journey. I'm trying to do better about that. I'm still not perfect, but no one else is either. The suspense of this video isn't going to be the same as it was last year. It's just going to be a nice, relaxing conversation that will end. It will end at 35 minutes and 23 seconds, if my math is correct. As I mentioned in last video of this type, that math is not absolute. Lots of things factor into it. Some of my journey has included more medical procedures, and I've touched on them in other videos, especially during my absence. I had melanoma cancer. I was fortunate in that we got it recognized, diagnosed, and treated in a very short time period and very aggressively. There were multiple surgeries. There was radioactive imaging. There were biopsies. There were follow-ups. There were stitches and lymph node biopsy and removal. And there are scars, physical and emotional. I haven't sat and thought about my journey with that for a while. Part of it is there are other spots on my skin, and now I have to worry every time I find something abnormal on my skin. I have to remember I am a melanoma producing person. My body produces melanoma. And it's always going to remember how to do that. It has this cellular level forbidden knowledge. And that's something I have to follow up on. Now, arguably, individuals who have survived as I have, who have had good prognoses and good treatment and clear margins, as I have a excellent outlook on life because part of their lives now are regular medical checkups all the time, at least once a year, if not every 6 months. They have skin checks and they do actual health checkups, which is something that people should do more often, but again, systems in place preventing growth. Pardon me. Spooktober is important to me because it marks the changing of the seasons as well. I am not someone who enjoys hot weather. And reflecting on this year, I realized that I spent most of this year wanting time to pass. Whether it was wanting the day to be over so it would be cooler in the evening, or wanting the summer to be over so it would be the cooler months. Whatever it was, I was wanting time to pass. And I think we all find ourselves in those situations, wanting time to pass. And we forget that the time we have is the time we have. It's always very much if I can just make it through the week, if I can just make it through the day, if I can just make it a little further. This isn't to say no one has any right to complain or feel that they don't want time to pass. It's more an encouragement to evaluate priorities. I would not say that my job is my favorite thing to do. But neither would I say that content creation is my favorite thing to do. I wouldn't say I have a favorite thing to do. Because there are too many factors that go into that. If you're exhausted, your favorite thing to do might be just rest. If you have energy, your favorite thing to do might be to do something productive. If you're feeling lonely, your favorite thing to do might be spend time with people. If you are feeling overstimulated, you might simply want the peace and quiet of a night home alone. Anyone who says they have a favorite thing to do isn't necessarily lying. They have conditions that they'd like to meet in order to enjoy something that they very much cherish. This is all a tangent. I was talking about work, because work is not my favorite thing to do. However, I have found myself in a position where even if it is not my favorite thing to do, I can find enjoyment for what I do. I can find pleasure in simple things, repairing broken things, solving problems, sometimes even creatively solving problems. It's not always that. There are plenty of times that it's simply mundane work. But there are moments, and I try to find those moments and appreciate them. I try to find the times that I can appreciate who I'm around, and I can find common ground with the ones I don't see eye to eye with. There's always common ground to be found. It might not always be easy, but there's always common ground to be found. Today has been a long day for me. And as much as I wanted to come home and record several videos, I think this will probably be my only video today. I still need to edit it. I still need to do my thumbnail. But I did want to do this video. When I started Spooktober this year, one of the things I made clear was that I was going into this without a plan. Unlike last year, where I didn't necessarily have a plan, but I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do. This year, I went in with no plan, no firm ideas. In fact, it was deliberate that I did not have a set idea, plan, schedule, anything like that. I have had some friends in my life ask about, because I'd mentioned that I'd be up for some cooperative, collaborative gaming. And I've done a few of those. We've done several of those with Danny and with Sweets. And I just got done recording some more with others. And some folks had mentioned that they hadn't heard a plan, and that was kind of intentional. I listed my availability. I mentioned when I could be available, and I was open to what other people wanted to do. I wasn't going to plan it, but I would be able and available to accommodate anything that would fit my schedule. Because last year, and I commented on this last year I had plans that didn't happen, that I tried to coordinate. Repeatedly, I tried to coordinate them. And the logistics simply did not work. Some people would be available and then they wouldn't be. Some people would want to do things and then they wouldn't be up for it. And I found that that happened most on things that I tried to set in stone, as it were. Whereas if I allowed others to take the lead on what they wanted to do and when they wanted to do it, it happened a lot more easily and more organically. I have taken that approach to a lot of things in life. One of the things I have mentioned and discussed is my health. And the reason that is worth mentioning is I've also, of course, gone in for health checks that have shown that I have a bit of high blood pressure. So all those overly caffeinated beverages as I had when I was a child, that's catching up to me. But I also wanted to tie health and authenticity and sincerity together as well. You see, I have chronic clinical depression. And I know I've mentioned that in a video or two. I haven't gone into detail about it. I think a lot of folks have some form of depression or another. Mine is chronic. It's not going to go away. It's not going to get better. I have tried treatments for it, and I've found ways that help. But nothing really definitive. With the burnout I've been facing with some things, and with the challenges I've been facing in others, one of these symptoms I've been facing a lot is anhedonia. Anhedonia, for those of you unfamiliar, is when certain stimuli, actually when virtually any stimuli fails to produce a positive dopamine reaction. You do not feel joy for things. You do not feel happiness. You do not feel excitement. You don't enjoy things. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, and it's not necessarily a clinical symptom. However, it is something I've been experiencing. And it is very hard as a content creator to sit down and create content when you are experiencing what feels like a void of an emotional void. Jokes don't make you laugh. nothing excites you. You don't see a light. You don't see brightness and colors. It's not saying that my depression doesn't have variations. It's just saying it's never going away. And with the things I've been facing, that has been one of the challenges I've been facing. How do I sit down and create content? How do I sit down and, laugh and chat and talk and make jokes and make puns and involve my audience, invest in my audience, and get them all on board when I don't feel anything? How do I talk to my friends when I have no desire to talk to anyone? How do I communicate with customers when I'd really rather just be laying in bed staring at a blank ceiling? That's a challenge. And the biggest motivation I have to use the methods I know to cope, to address, and to treat is that I don't want to not feel anything. That's a big part of why I stopped taking the antidepressants that I had been on, was because they made me feel nothing. Sure, I didn't get into a super self-destructive, depressive low point, but I didn't feel anything above that. And when I'm dealing with anhedonia, that's what I'm feeling. And one of the ways I address that is right now. For instance, I'm looking at the clock and I think, if each of these is a representation of the weeks I have left, I don't want to spend more time than I have to not feeling anything. And I'm aware that it's going to take energy. It's going to take a lot of energy to deal with that, to address that. Sometimes it takes more energy than I have. And those days, I just accept that right now I don't have enough energy. And then there are other days that circumstances go well enough that I have just a little bit of leftover energy. Just a little bit of something. And I've found that doing things to change up my routine completely help kind of jostle me out of that slump. At least enough that the opportunity for more energy presents itself more often. Whether that is finding a new trick to a game or finding a new method of editing. Sometimes it's watching an old familiar show, and sometimes it's just taking the pressure off of myself. The point is I make sure that I take the time and I use the opportunities I have to try to get better. I liken depression to a battle. Anyone who has depression knows it is a fight. It is a constant fight. And as much as it feels like we are alone when we are fighting this, we're not. And every day that you can see somebody that you know has depression, has something that they're fighting, Every day that you see them still fighting is a day that you know, hey, if they can do it, I might be able to as well. And so I encourage people to continue fighting. Don't give up. I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about this time. I didn't know. I don't always know what I'm going to do with the time I have. But I know the things I'd like to do. And I know the kind of person I'd like to be when I do the things that I do with the time I have left. That's what this channel is about. That's what I'm about. Small, sustainable changes. Sincere authenticity. And a cooperative, positive community. There are people in my life with whom I have stopped speaking. I have not fully necessarily cut ties with them, but for all intents and purposes, yes, we have cut ties. They no longer speak to me, and I don't reach out. However, I don't know that there is anybody, I don't know that there is anyone who, if they were in need, if they reached out and said, I need help, if they showed up at my door, that I would turn away. I don't know that I would be able to provide everything they would need, but I would try to help them as best as I was able, because that's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of person I've needed before, and I'm sure many, many others have. I think we were overdue for a check-in, just a simple conversation video, albeit with some pretty heavy overtones, if we're being honest. I'm going to keep creating videos. I don't know what the future of this channel holds. I don't know what my future holds. But I know that creating content, especially collaborative content, I know that that all feels good. I know that that is all something I enjoy. Because at the end of the day, I care about people. I don't always like people, but I care about people. And there are days that it's hard to remember, but I try to remind myself that I'm people too. I want everyone to be happy and healthy. And I know that's a bit of an idealistic view in the world we're living in, but I think we need more idealism. I know a lot of the things we've been doing lately have been silly, and so I wanted to be serious for at least 35 minutes and 23 seconds. So that you know when I'm making jokes, when I'm doing bits, you know it's just me trying to make the world that I live in slightly better for people facing challenges that I do. I'm still here, at least for a few more seconds. Farewell, my friends.